Hello and welcome back to Train Signal. We'll be going through the Monitoring View Desktop and System Health lesson. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at the event database, what its purpose is, and how we use that. We'll look at the System Health dashboard and what characteristics are bubbled up to that particular dashboard for your consumption. Then we'll also look at the View Administrator dashboard and all of its functionality. And then we'll take a look at desktop states and what that relates to when you're looking at a desktop and it's in an unconfigured state or it's customizing, what that means, what all those different characteristics mean. Then we'll look at the session status and how to monitor and manipulate sessions. And then we'll finally go through we'll walk through a monitoring and how to utilize these different aspects of the View Administrator interface. So with that, let's get going. First of all, let's look at the event database. So the event database essentially stores event information that occurs on the connection servers, the View agents, and the View administrator. So it's a centralized repository for information, both error-related, warning, informational information about the states of those particular components. Now the event screen displays the details of these events. So that's where you're going to actually go to look at and see what the different events are that are related. And there's also some particular areas where you can go look at events for just a particular desktop pool or just a particular desktop. So as you're down the road a little bit looking at a particular desktop or a particular desktop pool, a lot of times you'll see an event tab. And that event tab essentially is filtered down the event information for just that particular pool or just that particular desktop. So it's a way to get a lot more granular without having to do your own queries and searches in the event screen itself. Now the event database stores all of this data historically. It doesn't display all of this data in the View Administrator. You do get the event screen where you can get all this information, but if you want to get more than 6 months worth of information, because that's the largest that the View Administrator is going to be able to hold and how far back it'll be able to go, you can slim that down to 3 months or even earlier as far as how much information you want to store. But if you want to be able to extract any of that information on a historical period from, say, longer than 6 months, over a year or multiple years, then you'll need to actually go into the database itself and define your own query sets and mine that information that way. So you can definitely talk to your DBAs and see if you can get some help from them on how to mine that data if you need to get some longer trending historical information back. Now this database can be Microsoft SQL or it can be an Oracle database. So those are the two types that you're allowed to be able to use. Now if you're going to be using a SQL database, you do need to make sure that you're using SQL Server authentication, so not Windows integrated authentication. So when you go to actually set up that database, make sure that you've already got a SQL user account that has DBO privileges on that database that you can use for authentication back to that. And then one of the other things that you'll need to configure when you set up that database is a table prefix. So this table prefix is essentially just like a 3-letter code. I typically use EVT or VMW or some type of small code that's going to prefix those tables. So that way, if you want to have multiple event databases for multiple View infrastructures, you can have different ones based on a particular naming convention that you have across those different View pod infrastructures. That way you can utilize the same database. So the System Health Dashboard. The System Health Dashboard is kind of like a quick snapshot. It's located in the upper top left of the View Administrator screen when you first log onto it. And what it displays is the current number of remote sessions that are in use, the current number of local sessions, in other words, offline mode desktops, any problem desktops, and how many error and warning events that there are. It doesn't give you more detailed information about those error warning events, but just in general, for the entire View infrastructure, how many are there? It's also going to display the current number of View components, the vSphere services, Active Directory domains, and data stores that are in each of the following states: up, down, unconfigured, or unknown. So this gives you a really quick snippet, and without a lot of detail, but to make sure, is everything green? Right? Because if everything's up, it's going to be all green across the board. So you'll know that everything's fine. I'm not running out of space, or I don't have, I'm not losing connectivity to a data store or a particular domain. All that information is there and pretty easily seen from that. Now the View Administrator dashboard, very much like the previous dashboard, but it's in much more greater detail. So it's showing you the same types of components, but it's giving you a lot more information about those. So that's in your main screen in the main center panel. And it's going to provide you details on health of the entire View system, the versions that are there, and some configuration details and current status of all those different components. It's going to give you the current status on all desktops summarized by their status. It's also going to give you at the bottom a listing of all of the utilized data stores with their capacity information. So you get to get a quick snapshot of your data stores and how they're doing. Are they full? Is there some space still available on each of those systems? Now the desktop states, you're going to see the summary counts for these in the View Administrator dashboard. You'll see details of these states that are available in the individual desktops inventory. So on the dashboard, you're just going to get the counts of how many desktops are in what types of states. But as you go to the desktop inventory, you'll see a lot more of that detail. Now, a desktop can only be in one state at a time. That's kind of the definition of the state. It's what is currently happening with this desktop at this moment in time. So these are the types of states that can be there. For preparing, we can have a VM can be in a provisioning state. That's where the VM is being created. It's being set up and currently deployed. It can be in a customizing state. And this would be if it's going through the process of sysprep or quick prep, where it's actually customizing the VM for its unique identity. Or from a View perspective, if it's deploying a thin app package to it. Waiting for the agent stage means the VM's powered on, but the agent's not yet available. So the agent and the View Administrator or Connection Broker server have to be able to communicate to one another. So if they're not able to communicate for whatever reason, or the agent hasn't come back up as far as the service, it may not be connected yet. If you still continue to see that agent status being waiting for agent for a long time, then you've got some type of communication problem between your View Administrator, Connection Broker, and the desktop agent. So the deleting state, this would be where a VM is being marked for deletion and it's in the process of actually deleting that virtual machine. Maintenance mode, this is something that you can do manually. So you can manually put a VM or desktop into a maintenance mode status, and at that point users can't log in. That allows you to be able to do some maintenance type utilities on that particular virtual machine and not have to worry about the user trying to get into the VM at the same time. And then the startup state. This is where the agent is available, but there's some other services that are still in the process of starting. So a prepared for use state. Right? And the prepared for use state, you've got provisioned. So the VM is created, but it's powered off. So it's ready to go, but it's going to need to be powered on before someone's able to use it. Available. So the VM is powered on and it's ready for a user session. Connected. This means that someone's actually currently connected in a session to that particular VM. Disconnected. This is where a user has been assigned to that particular VM, but they're not connected at this point. They've actually disconnected their status for whatever reason, and they can reconnect at a later time. And then finally, there's checked out. The VM is currently running in local mode, and it's checked out to an individual user locally. Now, unentitled desktop states. So these are desktops that are assigned to users that is no longer entitled to the pool. So it's been assigned. This particular user has no longer entitlement back to the pool. So there's a disconnect in there between the pool settings and the user that was originally assigned to that particular desktop. So this can be viewed in the desktop's inventory or using the VDM admin command line tool to be able to use that. So session status. We can view and manage individual user sessions under the monitoring section of the View Administrator. So there is a sessions section, and much like I mentioned with the events section where you're able to view events, you also can view session status here as well as in each of the individual desktop pools. If you go to those desktop pools, there's also a session tab there where you can interact with sessions just from a specific desktop pool. So depending on how you want to utilize that, either one of those are available to you. So remote sessions, These are sessions where users are connected to desktops that are running centrally in the View infrastructure environment. The local sessions, these are users who have desktops checked out in local mode. Fantastic. Here we are now going through our walkthrough of the monitoring the system health of the View virtual desktops themselves. So first off, we've got our smaller dashboard up at the top right here, which is kind of our high-level overview of the View environment itself. Now, if you notice, all of these different dashboards have their own refresh button, so that way you can get a real-time view into how the environment is currently going. So we can see how many remote or local sessions we might have, right? So those folks that are logged in normally or logged in using the local mode operation or offline desktops. We can also get to see if there are any problem desktops. Those will show up here, and we can click, and this is a hyperlink that will directly take us to any of those desktops, so that way we can do a quick troubleshooting of systems that may not be working functionally. Also, we can look at our events and see if there are any event problems. So right now my environment has 3 error events that we can go look at, and no warning events. And then we can also look at overall system health, right? We can look at how all of our different services are, if there are any services that are down, or services that are in an unconfigured or an unknown state. And moving right along into that system health, we have our fuller system health dashboard, and these hyperlinks will take us directly to that area. So if I was in the pool section and wanted to look at the system health, it'll jump me right back to the main window dashboard up here. So I can see all the View components, all the different View servers, and the event database that's associated with that, the vSphere components themselves, and you can drill into those and take a look at individually those particular systems, and it'll tell you what's happening with them and give you a little more fine-grained detail about that particular component. So we've got our data stores, our ESX hosts, and our vCenter server all functional, and domains and any other trusted domains that may be a part of multi-trust would also be listed in here underneath domains. So our desktop status, we can look at how many desktops are currently in a preparing state, if we have any more of those problem desktops, or how many are prepared for use, and out of those prepared for use, and what different states are they? How many are provisioned? How many are available, connected, disconnected, or checked out? Now, if you remember correctly, the provisioned is they're set up and they're ready to go, but they are not necessarily on. These are systems that are powered off or suspended, currently not ready to directly connect to, but from an available standpoint, this is all ready to go, A-OK. Each one of these systems is powered on, set up, and ready to be connected to directly. And right now we don't have any that are connected or in a disconnected state, and we're not using the local mode option currently right now. We can also look at our data stores as well. So beneath here we get a nice quick snapshot view of our data stores. In this case I have 2 local disks, which I'm not currently using for anything other than ESX installation from there. But I have a iSCSI and an NFS target that we're using for our data stores, and it shows the capacity of that data store and its free space available to it. Now the other thing we can come do, and actually I'll use the hyperlink, we can come look at the events section underneath monitoring, and I'm going to use the hyperlink for these, because not only does this hyperlink directly to the events, but it also does a filtering on the word error. So we're able to filter on different attributes in here to be able to get to the details that we want, to then click find. So we can say, okay, these were provisioning errors that happened for these 3 virtual machines actually when they were going through the provisioning process. We can then clear the error log and then get back to what's listed here today. And so notice our time period is the last 3 days. We can go back further if we need to, and we can also export these events to a table, so that way we can manipulate them outside in a spreadsheet if we so wish to, and go from there. So now in order to actually get to the events and actually have events available to us, we have to have the event database configured for us. So if you'll notice under the View Configuration section, there is a title called Event Configuration. Now if we click on that, you can see the event configuration which has already been set in place for this particular database. It's a Microsoft SQL server. It's living on the Virtual Center server and has a standard SQL 1433 TCP port. The name of the database is view event, and the username, which needs to be, if it's a SQL server, needs to be a SQL account. This can't be using NT authentication. And then I've set up EVT as my table prefix for them. I can click edit to get at any of these sections and make changes to these settings. But essentially that's what you're going to need to input, right? The name of the database server, what type it is. If it's using a dynamic port or some other odd port, you can put that port in there directly, but it'll automatically populate it if you choose SQL or Oracle, the standard default port. Then you need to input the name of the database itself, the SQL username, and type and confirm the password, and then insert your table prefix there. And as we mentioned before, if you want to have multiple U infrastructures using the same database, you can have a different event table prefix, and that will allow you to have them use the same database and just set up different tables for those different view environments. Then we can also set the settings on this as far as how far back View Administrator is going to be able to go. 6 months is the default, as far back as you can go. Any further, then you'll need to create your own custom SQL queries, and you can work with your DBA on that. And then classify events as new for how long, 3, 2, or 1 days. And that's basically going to say how long is that going to show up in the events area up here. So whether or not this is how long this will hang around as an error warning message. So for up to 3 days, that'll actually be sitting up there and there. Alrighty. And that's it for our walkthrough of the view monitoring health and system status. So what have we covered? We've gone through the view event database and taken a look at our need for that and how we set that up and get that ready to view. We've taken a look at the system health dashboard and how that's kind of a micro snapshot of our view environment. It gives us a really quick up-down status of all of our different services and desktops. Then we've got our view administrator dashboard, which is a much more detailed and in-depth view into the health of our view administrator environment. And we've taken a walkthrough and looked at the individual desktop states. And then we've taken an individual view of the desktop states, looked at what those are, what they mean, and we've also looked at session status and how we're able to view session status and where we can interact with that. And then finally, we got a chance to do a monitoring walkthrough and go through the actual interface of the view infrastructure environment from a monitoring perspective. Thanks so much, guys, and we'll be seeing you soon.